You think you're fasting, you skipped breakfast, you pushed through the hunger, you told yourself, this is it. This is how I burn fat. But what if I told you? You might be spiking insulin the entire time without even realizing it. And that one mistake could be the reason your body refuses to burn fat. You've been told that fasting is simple, just don't eat. Skip a meal, drink your coffee, push through the hunger, wait for the magic to happen. And when the scale doesn't move, when your energy crashes, when your cravings come back stronger than ever, you blame yourself. You think you lack discipline. But the truth is far more unsettling because fasting was never about food. It was always about insulin. There's a silent hormone in your body controlling everything. Your fat storage, your energy levels, your hunger, even your ability to lose weight. And that hormone is insulin. Every time you eat, insulin rises. That's normal. That's expected. Insulin's job is to move glucose out of your blood and into your cells. But here's what most people don't understand. As long as insulin is elevated, your body is locked out of its fat stores. Fat burning doesn't just slow down, it stops. Your body cannot burn fat and store fat at the same time. It's one or the other, and insulin is the switch. So when you fast correctly, when insulin drops low enough, your body finally shifts. It unlocks stored fat. It begins to burn what you've been carrying for years. Energy stabilizes, hunger fades, your brain sharpens. This is the promise of fasting. But now comes the part nobody tells you. You can be fasting and still have high insulin. Read that again. You can skip meals, go hours without food, even feel hungry, and still not be in a fat-burning state. Because insulin doesn't only respond to calories, it responds to signals. And in today's world, you are surrounded by signals that trick your body into thinking you've eaten, even when you haven't. Let's start with the most deceptive one. Zero-calorie drinks. You've seen them, you've trusted them. Maybe you're drinking one right now. Diet sodas, sugar-free energy drinks, flavored waters, they promise everything, no sugar, no calories, no guilt. But your body doesn't read labels. Your brain tastes sweetness and sends a signal. Something sweet is coming. Prepare. And your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, even without sugar, even without calories. Studies have shown that artificial sweeteners can trigger an insulin response in certain individuals, especially those who are already struggling with insulin resistance. And if your insulin rises, even slightly, fat burning shuts down. You're still fasting. But metabolically, you just told your body to store, not burn. Now let's go deeper. Coffee. Black coffee is often considered safe during fasting. But what happens when it's not just black? A splash of milk, a spoon of cream, a keto-friendly creamer. You think it's harmless. It's small. It's insignificant. But insulin is not measured by your intentions. Milk contains lactose, a natural sugar. Cream, while low in carbs, still carries calories and proteins that can stimulate insulin. Even butter in your coffee, popular in ketogenic circles, can trigger a metabolic response that interrupts a true fast. And suddenly, what you thought was a fasting window becomes a feeding signal, and your body responds accordingly. Insulin rises, fat burning pauses, progress stalls. But here's where it gets even more surprising. Your body can release insulin without any food at all, through something called the cephalic phase insulin response. This is your brain anticipating food. You scroll through social media, delicious meals, desserts, recipes, cooking videos. Your senses engage. You imagine the taste, the smell, the texture, and your body begins to prepare. Insulin is released in advance, like before a single bite is taken. This is not theory. This is biology. Your body is always listening, always predicting, always preparing, and in a world filled with constant food stimulation, you are rarely in a true fasted state, even when you think you are. Now ask yourself, how many times have you tried fasting but surrounded yourself with food content? How many times have you powered through hunger while constantly thinking about your next meal and then wondered why it didn't work? Because fasting is not just physical, it's neurological. It's hormonal. It's deeply connected to your environment. Now let's talk about the biggest hidden driver of insulin that most people ignore: stress. You don't have to eat anything. You don't have to drink anything. All it takes is stress. When you're stressed, your body releases cortisol. Cortisol is a survival hormone. It tells your body you're in danger, even if that danger is just a deadline, a financial worry, or lack of sleep. And cortisol triggers the release of glucose from your liver. Your blood sugar rises, and when blood sugar rises, insulin follows. So even in a fasted state, yeah, your body can behave like you just ate a meal. Fat burning stops. Storage mode begins. This is why people who are constantly stressed, constantly tired, constantly pushing themselves without recovery, struggle to lose weight even when they fast. It's not because fasting doesn't work, it's because insulin is still elevated. And as long as insulin is high, the door to fat loss remains closed. This is the truth that changes everything. Fasting is not about willpower. It's not about how long you can go without eating. It's about how effectively you can keep insulin low. That's the real skill. That's the real strategy. And once you understand this, you stop blaming yourself, you stop chasing extremes, and you start focusing on what actually works. Clean fasting, water, black coffee, plain tea, nothing sweet, nothing flavored, nothing that tricks your brain. You protect your sleep, because one night of poor sleep can increase insulin resistance the next day. You manage stress, because a calm body is a fat-burning body. You reduce exposure to constant food stimuli, giving your brain a break from anticipation, and suddenly, fasting becomes easier, hunger becomes quieter, energy becomes stable, and your body finally shifts, because now insulin is low, and when insulin is low, fat burning is no longer blocked, it's activated. This is the difference between struggling and succeeding, between effort and results, between fasting and fasting that actually works. So the next time you skip a meal, don't just ask, am I fasting? Ask a better question. Is my insulin truly low? Because that one question has the power to change everything. You think fasting is just about willpower, about resisting food, about staying busy until the clock runs out. But what if I told you the biggest threats to your fast don't come from food at all? What if the reason your body refuses to burn fat has nothing to do with what you eat and everything to do with what your body feels? Because inside you, there is a system more sensitive than any diet plan, more reactive than any workout routine, and more powerful than motivation. It's your hormonal network. And at the center of it all is insulin working alongside cortisol, sleep hormones, and even your nervous system. And when these systems are disrupted, your fast silently fails, even if you never take a bite. Let's start with something most people completely underestimate: stress. Not the kind of stress you notice, but the kind your body carries quietly all day long. The kind that builds when you wake up already tired, when your mind is racing, when your phone never stops buzzing, when life feels like it's always on. Inside your body, stress is not just a feeling, it's a chemical event. When stress rises, your adrenal glands release cortisol. Cortisol is designed for survival. It evolved to help humans escape danger, not sit in traffic, not answer emails, not worry about bills. And here's where it becomes dangerous in modern life. Cortisol tells your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream. That means even though you haven't eaten, your blood sugar rises. And your body reacts the only way it knows how. Insulin follows. Because insulin is always responding to glucose. So now imagine this. You wake up fasting, proud, committed, but your body is already running a biochemical simulation of a meal. No food entered your mouth, but your metabolism behaves like it did. Fat burning shuts down. Shuts. Because insulin and fat burning cannot coexist. Now take that same stress and stretch it across a full day. Work pressure, emotional tension, constant notifications, mental overload. Research in metabolic physiology has consistently shown that chronic cortisol elevation is linked with increased insulin resistance. That means your cells stop responding properly to insulin over time. So not only does insulin rise more easily, it also lingers longer. And that creates a metabolic environment where fasting becomes less effective, even if you're doing everything right. but stress is only the beginning. Now let's talk about something even more underestimated: sleep. You might think sleep is rest, but biologically, sleep is a hormonal reset. During deep sleep, your body regulates insulin sensitivity, repairs metabolic pathways, and resets hunger hormones like ghrelin and leptin. Now imagine what happens when that process is interrupted. One short night of sleep, one fragmented night, one late bedtime scrolling through your phone. Studies from metabolic research journals have shown that even a single night of poor sleep can reduce insulin sensitivity significantly the next day. That means your body requires more insulin to manage the same amount of glucose, and higher insulin levels mean one thing: fat storage is easier, fat burning is harder. So you wake up fasting, but your body is already in a compromised metabolic state. Then you drink coffee thinking you're safe, but your system is already primed for instability. And now fasting feels harder than it should. Hunger feels louder. Energy crashes feel sharper. Cravings feel stronger. And you think it's discipline, but it's biology. Now let's go even deeper into something almost nobody talks about: your brain, not just your body, but your thoughts. Because your brain has a direct line to your pancreas. It doesn't need food to send signals, it only needs expectation. This is called the cephalic phase response. Your body begins preparing for food when it expects food. You see a meal, you smell food cooking, you scroll through recipes online, you imagine your next bite, and your nervous system reacts instantly. Insulin can rise in anticipation. This has been observed in controlled metabolic studies where participants showed measurable hormonal changes simply from sensory exposure to food cues. No eating occurred, no calories entered the body, but the hormonal cascade still began. Now think about modern life. You are surrounded by food cues all day long, social media feeds filled with meals, advertisements showing desserts, videos of cooking, eating, tasting, chewing. Even if you're fasting physically, your brain is constantly rehearsing eating, and every rehearsal sends a signal. Prepare the body, increase insulin sensitivity to incoming food, slow fat burning just in case. And over time, this creates a state where fasting is no longer clean, not because you failed, but because your environment never allowed true metabolic silence. Now combine everything so far: stress raising cortisol, cortisol raising blood sugar raising insulin, poor sleep amplifying insulin resistance, food cues triggering anticipatory insulin responses, each system stacking on top of the other. And suddenly fasting becomes confusing. You're doing the hours, you're skipping the meals, you're following the rules, but the results don't match the effort. And this is where most people quit. They assume fasting doesn't work for them, but the truth is far more precise. Fasting works, but only in the absence of hidden insulin triggers. And when those triggers are present, the fast becomes incomplete. Now here's the turning point, because once you understand this, you stop thinking about fasting as a countdown. And you start thinking about it as a hormonal environment. Your goal is no longer just time without food. Your goal becomes control of the internal signals that decide whether your body burns fat or stores it. So what actually changes everything? Not more restriction, not more suffering, but more regulation. You begin by calming your nervous system, slow breathing, walking, sunlight exposure, reducing mental overload. You begin protecting sleep like it is medicine, because metabolically it is. You begin reducing unnecessary stimulation, especially constant food exposure during fasting hours. And slowly, something shifts. The hunger stops screaming. The energy stabilizes. The cravings lose their power, not because you forced your body, but because you stopped sending conflicting signals. And when those signals quiet down, your hormones finally align. Insulin drops to its natural fasting level. And when insulin stays low, your body does what it was designed to do from the beginning. It burns stored fat efficiently, naturally, predictably, and for the first time, fasting stops feeling like a struggle and starts working like biology intended. You've made it this far into fasting. You've skipped meals, you've pushed through hunger, you've followed the rules, you've waited for the results everyone promised you would come naturally. But there's a moment almost everyone eventually hits. And it feels confusing because even when fasting is done correctly, even when the hours are long enough, even when food is clean and minimal, the fat loss slows down, the energy doesn't feel as sharp, the results feel inconsistent. And that's when most people start questioning everything. But the problem is rarely fasting itself. The problem is what happens when the fast ends, because fasting is only half the equation. What you do after fasting determines whether your body stays in fat-burning mode or instantly switches back into storage mode. And this switch is controlled by one powerful hormone, insulin. The moment you eat, insulin rises. That is not a failure. That is biology. But the size of that insulin response determines everything, because insulin is not just a blood sugar regulator. It is a metabolic gatekeeper. When insulin is high, your body is locked into storage mode. When insulin is low, your body is unlocked for fat burning. And here's the mistake most people make after fasting. They break their fast in a way that sends insulin skyrocketing. After hours of fasting, the body becomes extremely sensitive. That means the first food you eat after a fast has an amplified hormonal effect. And if that first meal is high in refined carbohydrates, sugar, or even overly processed foods, insulin surges rapidly, blood sugar spikes, fat oxidation shuts down immediately. And the body shifts from burning stored fat to storing incoming energy. Even worse, it doesn't just stop fat burning for that meal. It can delay fat oxidation for hours afterward, meaning your entire fasting effort gets compressed into a much smaller metabolic benefit window. Now imagine repeating that cycle daily. Fast, break fast incorrectly, spike insulin, store energy, repeat. And over time, your body learns a pattern. It becomes efficient at storing energy, not using it. This is not a lack of discipline. This is metabolic adaptation. Now let's go deeper into what actually happens inside your body when insulin spikes after a fast. Your liver, which has been releasing stored glucose during fasting, suddenly gets a flood of incoming glucose from food. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin in a strong wave. Insulin then tells your cells to absorb glucose quickly. Muscle cells take some. Liver stores some. But when glycogen stores are already full, excess energy is converted into fat storage. And here's the critical part most people never hear. Insulin doesn't just store energy. It actively blocks fat breakdown. That means even the fat you just unlocked during your fast gets put back into storage mode. So you don't just lose momentum, you reverse it. And that's why people feel like they are starting over every single day. But the problem isn't fasting. It's breaking the fast in a way that disrupts hormonal stability. Now let's talk about what science shows about post-fast metabolism. Research in metabolic physiology consistently demonstrates that after fasting periods, insulin sensitivity increases. That means your body becomes more responsive to carbohydrates and protein. This is a double-edged sword. On one side, it is powerful for health. On the other side, it means poor food choices after fasting have a magnified negative effect. A high sugar meal after fasting doesn't just spike insulin slightly, it creates a disproportionate hormonal surge compared to eating the same meal in a non-fasted state. This is why timing and composition matter more than people realize. Now think about modern eating habits. Most people break their fast with something quick. Bread, juice, cereal, snacks, highly processed foods, sometimes even healthy smoothies loaded with fruit sugar. And in that moment, the body is primed for absorption. Insulin rises sharply, glucose floods the system, and fat burning shuts down instantly. But there's another layer people miss completely. It's not just what you eat, it's how fast you eat it. Rapid eating after fasting can overwhelm the body's metabolic regulation systems. The faster the glucose enters the bloodstream, the faster insulin must respond. This creates sharp spikes instead of controlled metabolic transitions. Now contrast that with a controlled refeeding strategy. When you break a fast with whole foods, healthy fats, fiber, moderate protein, The insulin response is smoother, slower, more stable, and that stability matters because stability keeps your body in a metabolic state where fat burning is not fully shut down. It allows overlap, a transition instead of a switch. And that is where real metabolic flexibility begins. Now let's address something even more important. Fasting is not just about what you avoid. It's about what you signal to your body. Every time you fast correctly, you send a message. Energy is coming from inside the body. We do not need to store, we can release. But every time you break a fast incorrectly, you send a different message. Energy is abundant and fast. Store it quickly. Prepare for more. And over time, your body adapts to the most common signal it receives. That is why consistency matters more than perfection, because your metabolism is not reacting to a single meal. It is learning patterns over time. Now here's where everything changes. When you begin breaking your fast with intentional structure, when you prioritize low insulin impact foods, when you avoid rapid glucose spikes, when you support steady digestion instead of shock loading your system, something powerful happens. Your body stays in a semi-fat burning state even after eating. Insulin rises, but not excessively. Glucose enters cells, but gradually. Fat oxidation pauses, but only partially, and then resumes much faster. This is metabolic flexibility. The ability to switch between fuel sources without locking into storage mode. And this is what most people are missing. Not fasting itself, but the recovery phase after fasting. Now zoom out. Think about the cycle. You fast. Insulin drops. Fat burning activates. Then you eat. Insulin rises. And fat burning either pauses briefly or shuts down completely. The difference between those two outcomes is everything. It determines whether fasting is transformative or just temporary. And this is where precision matters because your goal is not just to fast longer, your goal is to maximize the fat burning window and minimize the storage window. And that begins with how you end your fast. So the next time you complete a fasting period, don't rush into food. Don't break it emotionally. Don't reward hunger with sugar or processed carbohydrates. Instead, think like your metabolism is listening, because it is. Think about insulin not as an enemy, but as a powerful switch that must be controlled, not ignored. Because when insulin is stable after fasting, your body doesn't crash. It doesn't store excessively. It doesn't lose momentum. It continues. And that continuity is what creates real transformation. Not extreme fasting, not perfection, but intelligent recovery. And once you understand that, fasting stops being just a tool for restriction and becomes a strategy for long-term metabolic control. And that changes everything about how your body burns fat forever.